She is very difficult to officiate because of all of the contact that's happening around her all of the time. That being said, I was in contact with a number of WNBA coaches yesterday about this topic of the officiating in the WNBA.
What Rebecca Lobo is about to say about Caitlin Clark and the WNBA refs is absolutely eye-opening, and the WNBA brass can't ignore it anymore. Because while we have just witnessed the most incredible demonstration of the Caitlin Clark effect in the wake of the WNBA's poor officiating in the Fever Sun game, that same officiating could also crush the WNBA entirely. And Rebecca, a WNBA legend, just sounded the alarm. This goes beyond a logical argument. She revealed what people are saying behind closed doors across the WNBA about the state of the officiating. The league won't like this, but all of it needed to be said. Because if we've learned anything, it's that the WNBA has learned absolutely nothing when it comes to handling its golden goose, Caitlin Clark. Let's break down what Rebecca said, and also the developing story with the Fever that is great news in many ways, but at the same time makes the WNBA's inaction that much scarier. But first, like this video. Every like equals a spare whistle for the refs, since the one in their pocket clearly isn't getting used. And don't forget to subscribe for more Caitlin Clark and Fever updates. Let's rewind for a second, because the WNBA needs a reminder.
The nerve, the second-year player clearing out that side of the floor, shooting on Stewie, and then watch the reaction with one another. Stewie's laughing.
As I write this, Caitlin Clark's triumphant return was just a few games ago. She dropped 25 points in the first half, including 3 logo bombs in 38 seconds. A stretch so electric, it didn't just remind fans what they were missing. It reminded the entire league who's actually driving the bus.
And Cunningham is down behind the play, but they've got Caitlin Clark. 2 players with incredible up. Clark, another long 3. She's back!
This was the statement of statements, the game that made everything crystal clear. The WNBA doesn't just benefit from Caitlin Clark, it relies on her. And those 5 games she missed, they weren't just a stumble. They were an exposure. Viewership dropped, social engagement tanked, national interest flatlined, and suddenly, every WNBA storyline without Caitlin felt like background noise.
But here we go with Caitlin Clark, singularly, being missing for the time she was gone, and ratings tanking, 50% in some cases. And then also she comes back and reminds everyone how spectacular she is, and everybody's talking about the WNBA. So if you needed to sort of have it affirmed to you that it is just her, that the singularity of her is what we are talking about, and her star power, you got it with this absence and then the way she came back.
After weeks of crashing ratings and mounting pressure, Caitlin Clark's return didn't just lift the Fever, it lifted the entire WNBA. Their game against the Liberty peaked at 2.8 million viewers, making it one of the most watched WNBA broadcasts ever. For context, the NHL's Stanley Cup Finals averaged 2.5 million viewers. And sure, comparing hockey and basketball isn't a perfect apples-to-apples match. But Caitlin Clark just outdrew a century-old men's sports league in its championship round. That's not normal. And while the significance of this seems to have been completely missed by WNBA leadership, which we'll talk about in a moment, it hasn't been lost on Rebecca Lobo, an Olympic gold medalist, basketball Hall of Famer, and perhaps ESPN's most level-headed voice in the room. Before I get to her comments about the referees, just check out her explanation about just how seismic Clark's return was.
Rebecca, tell me, what does Clark's return mean for the WNBA?
Well, I mean, it means a lot more people are paying attention once again. We know how much Caitlin drives ratings. We know how much Caitlin drives attention on the WNBA. And for her to come back and do it in that way was just ridiculous.
Notice what Rebecca Lobo said. People are watching again. It's a subtle phrase, but it says everything. Because if people are watching again, it means they stopped watching. And we all know exactly when that happened, when Caitlin Clark was out. Lobo didn't stop there. She went on to explain exactly why viewers came flooding back the moment Clark returned.
I'm sitting there at the end of the first quarter when she had that 38-second stretch where she drained deep three after deep three after deep three. I was just sitting there thinking, I've been around this league since 1997. I have never seen that in a WNBA game. Have we seen players go on runs? Of course we have, but not like that. Not where a couple of the three-pointers are from 30-plus feet. It was an exhibition by her.
That's the thing. These weren't your standard long twos or even deep threes. These were logo bombs from another zip code. Few, if any, players can do that repeatedly and as casually, which is why fans tune in. Even Natasha Cloud, who hasn't said the nicest things about Caitlin's fans, had to concede the truth. You have to guard her as soon as she crosses center. This isn't normal. Just ask Rebecca.
It was just ridiculous. It's not often that you're watching the WNBA or that I'm watching it and I'm like, wow, I've just never seen this before.
All of this makes what's been happening, not just since Caitlin's return, but honestly all of last season and now this one, especially concerning, because we're not just talking about missed calls or tough defense anymore. We're talking about a pattern that's become so obvious, so blatant, that even longtime WNBA insiders like Rebecca Lobo are stepping up and speaking out. And the game against the Sun, that should have sent shivers down the league's spine.
This angle is wild, folks. There's the eye gouge. Watch Mabry. Boom! I mean, come on.
JC Sheldon and Marina Mabry basically tag-teamed Caitlin Clark mid-game with a claw to the face, then a body check to the court. And somehow, neither of them got ejected. And look, this isn't me pretending Caitlin wasn't chirping a bit with JC earlier. She was, but trash talk isn't a license to assault someone. You can't just knock the face of the league to the ground like it's WWE and expect it to fly. Even the commentators were stunned. You could hear it in their voices. They expected an ejection. And around the league, the reaction was the same. Coaches, analysts, fans, even players were all stunned by what happened.
Hey, we would have been crashing our team.
Courtney, if somebody ever tackles you like that,
Nobody would ever tackle me like that. They would play with Bridget like that, and then we would have to like take it up there.
okay.
You see what I'm saying?
But I'm just saying.
Nobody would ever play with me like
If
that.
that ever happened, you better crash out behind me, because I'm crashing out behind you.
T,
We can share the same jail cell.
Now, of course, the face claw and shove on Caitlin was the viral moment, the one everyone's talking about. But it wasn't some isolated flash of chaos. The tension had been building throughout the entire game, and the refs were letting it slide.
This is JC Sheldon right here with an entire handful of Caitlin Clark's shoulder and bicep, and she's twisting it. Okay? I mean, this is wild. Here's the zoomed out look, the snapshot. I mean, this league does not have control of its players.
And the chippiness went from simmer to boil fast. And of course, Stephanie White was livid after the game. You could see it in her body language before she even said a word. She sat down, took a breath, and then absolutely unloaded.
You know, the game has changed so much. Players are faster, they're better, they're bigger, they're stronger. They're as good as they've ever been. They're as athletic as they've ever been. The game is fast now. Things are happening quickly. Everybody's getting better, except the officials.
So yeah, that's about as bad as you can roast the refs without actually naming names. We're all getting better, and you aren't. It's brutal, and it cuts to the core of what so many players, coaches, and fans have been feeling. And here's the thing. This didn't start with the Sun game. It's been building all season. The missed calls, the inconsistency, the way players like Caitlin Clark are being officiated differently, and not in a protective way.
What was that play? Oh my God, this is rigged. This is rigged. She got yanked, fell on her hip. That's a hack. That's a hack. That's a hack. Oh my God, they hacked the one upon her and they hacked Caitlin Clark. They are both hacks. They are both hacks. They hacked Fever twice, and then there was a phantom foul called on Sabrina Ionescu.
From the preseason, it was already obvious. The Fever weren't getting the calls, but it all came to a head during their 90-88 loss to the Liberty, a game that turned into a boiling point for fans and players alike. The officiating that night felt one-sided. Ticky-tack fouls were being called for New York, while Indiana couldn't seem to buy a whistle. The imbalance at the free throw line was glaring, with the Liberty racking up attempts and the Fever barely getting to the stripe. But what truly set people off were the questionable calls, or lack of calls, in the final minutes. The worst came at the very end. Caitlin Clark was clearly fouled by Natasha Cloud on the final possession, unable to even get a shot off. Replay after replay showed it, and social media erupted. Analysts called it out. Fans were furious. And Stephanie White? She went off.
I thought she got fouled. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. A minus 31 free throw discrepancy. And I might be able to understand it if we were just chucking threes, but we're not. We're attacking the rim. And the disrespect right now for our team has been pretty unbelievable. So it's disappointing, that it doesn't go both ways, or it hasn't gone both ways.
It's funny, she got fined for this, but not for going off on the refs after the game against the Sun. It almost felt like the league was silently admitting fault, like even they knew it was indefensible. And honestly, they should admit it. Because before we even get into what Rebecca Lobo said, which is revealing and honestly dangerous for the league, we need to talk about the growing frustration across the entire WNBA.
The second time where I'm attacking, it's very physical. I'm saying something to the ref, watch my landing space, watch physicality. I get laughed at, and it ends in my ankle getting turned. The same thing happened in Dallas, a flagrant that wasn't called. Same thing happened here. So my ankle is hanging in there, but it's starting to get very frustrating. I'm averaging less than 2 free throws a game, and I drive, I'm physical. I'm not someone who's avoiding contact. So I just hope that the safety of players starts to become a priority versus the ego of refs.
The refs are literally laughing at players when they bring up concerns about rough play, not just brushing them off, laughing while players are out there saying, I'm going to get hurt if this keeps up. And now, back to Rebecca Lobo, and how all of this ties back to Caitlin Clark. Because here's the bottom line. If Caitlin goes down, it's game over. Everyone knows it. The fans, the players, the networks, the league, whether they'll admit it or not. And Rebecca, to her credit, didn't sugarcoat it. She said what needed to be said in the most diplomatic way possible. But if you actually listen to her words, it's even more concerning than you think.
She is very difficult to officiate because of all of the contact that's happening around her all of the time. That being said, I was in contact with a number of WNBA coaches yesterday about this topic of the officiating in the WNBA, and all of them said it needs to get better. Specifically, the consistency, not only from one game to the next, but the consistency within a game.
Now, did you catch what she said? She didn't just say some coaches are concerned. She said all of them. Every single coach she's talked to agree that the officiating is a serious problem. And here's where it gets even worse. Because if all the coaches agree that the refs have lost control, they've now got no choice but to adjust. They'll have to play by a different rule book. The unspoken one that says, if the refs won't protect our players, we will. That's when things get dangerous.
One coach told me, we tell our players to be as physical as they can possibly be for 40 minutes because we know for 38 of them, they're pretty much going to get away with it. So I think everybody would like to see a tighter whistle and a little bit more freedom of movement.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like telling drivers to go as fast as they want because there's no highway patrol. And if you don't speed, you'll get left behind, even if it's unsafe. That's what the WNBA is doing right now. By refusing to raise the standard of officiating, they're creating an environment where players are forced to be more physical, even if it's unsafe, because it's about survival. And they know the refs aren't going to step in. We've already seen what that leads to: the blatant fouls against Caitlin Clark, the cheap shots, the body checks, the mounting frustration from coaches and fans. And at some point, when it keeps happening again and again, it stops feeling like oversight and starts looking like a message. Like the league is tacitly saying, when it comes to guarding Caitlin Clark, it's open season.
And they just kept shoving Caitlin. They're like, well, they can't just keep calling fouls. I'm like, they're literally just running around hacking her. The referees have made it like a point that this is how you beat the Fever. You hack them. You don't even, it's not being physical. You just hack them. Because the referees are going to allow them be hacked. Late in the game with the Fever, hack them. Not being physical, hack them. Don't go for the ball, hack them.
And look, I get it. Kathy Engelbert wants rivalries. She literally said in an interview that players aren't supposed to be nice to each other. And in theory, that's fine. Rivalries sell. A little edge can be good for the game, but this is a massive miscalculation. Because when it comes to Caitlin Clark, the WNBA doesn't need fake drama and dirty fouls. They already have the most talked about, most watched, most marketable player in women's sports, and we just got the perfect example of why.
That's a flagrant foul. It's a hard foul.
Everyone talks about the ratings when Caitlin Clark is on the court versus off it. We know that story. But what just happened to Sophie Cunningham might be the most underrated proof yet of just how powerful the Caitlin Clark effect really is.
As we expected, Sophie Cunningham has reached 1 million followers. 1 million followers. Sophie Cunningham on TikTok has gained, if I'm not mistaken, I think she has gained nearly 900,000 followers. It's at least 700,000. Sophie Cunningham on TikTok now has 1 million followers.
Sophie defended Caitlin, and overnight, she became a rock star. She gained over 1 million followers across platforms. Her TikTok comments, wall-to-wall love from Caitlin fans, people thanking her for standing on business. Stuff like, guess I'm watching the WNBA now. I need a Cunningham jersey ASAP. And here's the thing, this isn't just about Sophie. This is about a blueprint. Just like we got a perfect example of the ratings drop without Caitlin, we just got a perfect example of what happens when you support her. Fans follow the players who stand with Caitlin. They cheer for their teams. They start following the WNBA. It's often slow, but it can also happen quickly. And none of that can happen if Caitlin's not on the court. So say what you want about the refs or the physical play. There has to be a line.
The Indiana Fever, they need to go hockey. And let me explain this. The great Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player in my lifetime. Okay, all respect due to Gordie Howe and everyone else. But they had a rule in the National Hockey League, and I've heard quotes where defensemen have said, they were asked, hey, how come you don't nail Gretzky along the board? They said, no, we'll hit him. But they say, we'll never take a cheap shot. We'll never take anything unnecessary or anything too far, because we understand his importance to the league, and part of our paycheck we owe to him.
I'm not saying players can't be physical with Caitlin Clark. She's tough, she can take contact, and she's not asking for special treatment. But going after her eyes like JC Sheldon did, that crosses a line. That's not about defense, that's about trying to hurt someone. And when the person you're targeting is the face of the league, the one driving ratings, ticket sales, merch, and media attention, that kind of recklessness doesn't just put Caitlin at risk. It threatens the future of the entire league. It's not just dangerous, it's short-sighted, literally and figuratively. Candace Parker, a WNBA legend, said it best.
And so I think that the WNBA as a whole is in an amazing place. Now it's about business to me.
She's not asking players to go easy. She's just saying what any smart veteran would say, this is a business. Caitlin is good for everyone's paycheck. Protecting her isn't about favoritism, it's about protecting the investment. Because whether some players like it or not, Caitlin Clark is the one driving this surge. And if she goes down again, the ripple effects will hit everyone.
Kathy Engelbert praised the league star by saying, quote, she's the most popular athlete in America. Not women's basketball player, not WNBA player, not NBA player, the most popular athlete in America.
Kathy's not wrong. Caitlin Clark isn't just part of the WNBA's future, she is the future. And if the league can't figure out how to protect its most valuable asset, from reckless fouls, from inconsistent officiating, from petty jealousy, then they don't deserve what she brings. Because here's what happens when you support Caitlin Clark. Viewership rises, jerseys sell out, new fans flood in, and the entire ecosystem benefits. Players, teams, sponsors, media. So yeah, Rebecca Lobo said what needed to be said, but the question now is anyone listening? Because the next time Caitlin gets knocked down, it might not just cost her a game. It might cost the WNBA everything. If you're still here, drop a basketball in the comments to let me know. Thanks for watching. See you next time.